indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning, everybody. Good morning. First on the agenda, we've got Clerk Renner with the special funding request to approve and allow chair to sign.
Hey, I emailed them all to you. Brian Squirts approved them. We are waiting on 3, City of Cody Recycling, Park County 4-H, and Powell Valley Recycling.
So you're saying we're waiting on 3, so those have not, they're not in the batch.
They're not in the batch to be approved, so they'll be approved at the, hopefully the August 17th
Yes.
meeting to be paid the first payment in September. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, so, and any questions on that?
Any questions, Colleen?
And then moving forward, we're asking for. Pam's usually does this, just so you know.
Yeah, let's go ahead and move, act on the. special
Oh,
funding.
sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we approve and allow the chair to sign the.
No, every member signs
Well, that's what we have on here, not the chair to sign, so.
on the contract.
Oh, that's what it says. So
Okay.
what
I'm sorry, you told me initially, Mr. Chairman, so I said.
Oh, no, the whole board signs the contract.
Mr. Chairman, I'll change my motion. I
Sorry.
move to approve and allow the board to sign the FY 2023 special funding request contract.
Moving and seconded. Is there further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Now we can move forward.
I just wanted to get that. Next was for Shreve Lodge is where it will be located. The applicant is CIH, which is the DBA as the Irma, to do the lion steak fry on August 28th. They have paid their fee and just need approval.
Check with the sheriff.
Yes, Hans did everything he usually does. I just have to present it today.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move we approve.
Second. Moving seconded. Further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries. It is the consent agenda with all sorts of items on it. Oh, Colleen.
One change, we're actually, we're approving. Do you have that right on the approval? Never mind, no change, sorry,
Okay,
never mind.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the consent agenda of items listed on our agenda.
Second.
moving seconded. Further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Okay, I guess we're waiting on Park County Planner 2, Kim Dillon, to see if he's,
So that's public.
no, first one's not public yet.
You know, the chairman did not give us much of a break today.
I
I know,
talked to,
that's why I had to.
I know.
talk to the executive. I'm not exactly, I don't run this show, she does. Get hammered, all this.
Oh, yeah.
You made a motion to approve consent.
Oh, yeah.
Lloyd did.
That is a very interesting thing. It's been the Wyoming Wildlife Foundation is taking this and running with it. It's happening. They're doing them all over the state. It's not a fundraiser, but it is. They're not gonna ask for they're not gonna ask for money then, but that night, yeah. But you'll be on there.
I've been going my whole life without keeping it.
Morning, Kim. Morning, Patty.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners.
We're running ahead and I get beat up for that. We're running, when I go run behind, I get beat up for that. So,
Can't win.
nope. Next on the agenda, we have the Grace Simple Subdivision Final Plat Review of 276. Excuse me. Go with Kim, if you want to, if you're
Yeah,
ready.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the applicant for this is Grace Incorporated. The zoning district for this property is GRP. The planning area is Cody Town Rule. We did get an application for this final plat on July 15th of this year. The final plat is shown in figure 1, as you saw. The applicant would like approval for two 2.51 acre lots. The location of the property is about 1.5 miles south of Ralston on the north side of County Lane 14. You see that in figure 2. The parcel does currently have an address of 1491 Lane 14. These lot sizes as proposed are consistent with the GRP zoning district, which of course is the district it's in. In terms of neighboring land use, the area includes residential and residential vacant. And this parcel of land happens to be an exempt remainder from the 5-lot Christensen subdivision. And that subdivision was created many decades ago. So this is or is a remaining parcel from that subdivision. In terms of site characteristic, proposed lot 1 contains 4 structures, does have a mobile home, a garage, and a Quonset building, and a small shed. Proposed lot 2 is vacant land. Topography on both proposed lots is relatively flat. This property is not within any municipality, so that review is not required. This does not require a public hearing notice. In terms of agency referrals, you saw a list of agencies we sent this to and who responded. In terms of the postal service, Fire District number 1 and Park County School District 1, those agencies all said their services can be provided. Garland Light and Power responded. They have service to lot 1 and lot 2 can be served by them. Of course, this is a simple, so utilities is not required. TCT stated that they cannot guarantee service to these lots. Black Hills Energy responded. They do have a lane or a gas main along lane 14. They can supply gas. Treasurer said taxes are paid. Willwood Irrigation District said there are no water rights on this property. Public Works responded with a letter. They have no concerns with drainage and erosion control, and also that they addressed the driveway. And they said, Public Works said that approving the subdivision should not substantially change traffic on lane 14. And they talked about having lots 1 and 2, how people will be able to access those. Conservation District, they responded with the soils report summarization letter. Weed and Pest did an initial inspection. Mary found the presence of noxious weeds. She said a weed plan will be required as a result, and we have received an approved weed plan. We did not get a response from Game and Fish. We've had no public comments regarding this simple subdivision. The Planning and Zoning Commission looked at this on July 21st of this year. They recommended approval. You see on page 7, their conditions. Number 2, that has been met, that's the weed plan. Number 3, that's information about an access easement across 2 for the benefit of lot 1. That condition has been met. A shared road maintenance agreement is something Teamsy recommended. That condition has been met. Final plat review committee met on July 26th. There were some minor changes and corrections. They were identified, those were made, and then we did get the final plat on July 27th. Mr. Chairman, we have some findings of fact. We have one recommended condition. We're happy to answer any questions you might have. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Yes, good point. Of course, this is a very simple subdivision. We received a brand new final plat this morning, and obviously we haven't had a chance to compare it to the newest final plat we have, and obviously you haven't seen it, so we don't know what changes were made. We just received it this morning.
Just Whitlock's here, can you tell me, is there any major changes?
There are no major changes. I called Scott, our engineer, this morning. He extended a signature line and he cleaned up a little bit of punctuation and spelling, and that was the extent from him.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I have a question, and still learning a lot about planning and zoning and breaking up lots, but my question with this one is, we're breaking up another piece into two pieces and there's already subdivision lots all around it. How did this come in as a simple and it doesn't affect a major when we're breaking up that area that much more?
So it's two, obviously two lots have been created, which would make you think it would be a simple. My understanding is this parcel was left as a remaining parcel before 2000. And so we go back to 2000 and look at,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, that subdivision that it came from was done probably in the 70s or 80s.
Prior to that. Okay,
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, any further questions for staff? Commissioner Beal,
I move to approve very simple subdivision to 76.
Second.
moved and seconded, further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is a public hearing, so we've got 15 minutes. So
All right.
Commissioner Tilden, there's your break.
Colby, do you have a number for us? Please.
Is there anything we need to move ahead on? It's pretty kind of tough, I think.
51.
Thank you.
So, there's your break that Joe was right about. So,
Cool, now I can go get some food.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I really didn't need to break.
you just wanted to
I
rest.
just want to give you a hard time.
Get in line.
Thank you.
You bet. Have a good one. Good night.
Yes, so there's going to be here, of course, we do one of those. This one.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Now they'll be able to. They quit shutting it off.
Cancel. Perfect. Tuesday, back to 11.
So I got
So then they could.
I was reading the minutes from the last
meeting. I like training, and I think we need that, but I see that Kim was really approved to go to a EPA training. Why is it have to go so far?
It's the floodplain stuff that they want to do it like once a year and it's done
In Maryland?
to the headquarters where they do that. The flood certification.
He's one who already.
Well, I just,
We've approved it actually the last few years and things have gone the way it could go.
oh, there needs to be an issue.
But not floodplain certification. Yeah.
Not that I- That's necessary.
Might not be a
As
bad
long as we
idea.
do floodplain stuff, that is necessary.
Not so sure we should do that one.
I'm not so sure.
Well, true. But if we do, it's not a bad idea to do that.
Absolutely. If you're gonna do it, yeah, it needs to be.
Check out your
Yes,
cases.
it's just, well, not another one, they did one, I think, like 29. But I don't know, they changed, I assume they were just like corrections.
dry eye.
Mhm.
So since you're all here.
I think it should be a time we bring some agency, some department personnel with us. Patty?
I recommend you.
What do you say? Speak of these. What time we were, 10:30.
Here's the contract. If we start signing them.
Oh,
Give my email.
Yes, you do. Yeah, you ready?
Larry doesn't like me.
For license.
Do we need to sign that one? Do we need to sign out for license and any special government?
Not a problem I have with you.
And then these.
We're just gonna have people feel the people like this.
Joe, you're gone Friday? Joe, you're gone Friday? So you're- Okay. I guess it's gonna be impossible.
Bring Kim.
Yeah, process of elimination. Bring him. Him or Joy. Yeah, we could do that. We could do it on planning because there's so much happening right
Well,
now.
I think you can discuss the land use plan.
Let me go see.
You want to send it?
Let me see Joy's.
That'd be perfect.
And when you keep talking about the land use plan, the people will stop calling in to look forward to that. They might tune in to take it up.
Yeah, right. Then you can jam.
Well, it'd be, all they would do is stay the night there. I'll let Dennis do that for the staff.
Doctor, who'd you find to do the video on Friday?
Joy. Joy and I are gonna do it.
Oh, okay.
Unless Lloyd wants to be there. Lloyd wasn't in the room, so. Lloyd, have Joy into doing speak your piece on Friday. I'll be there. Do you want to be there?
You want to go? Enjoy it?
Joe can't, he can't, and Scott can't. What?
We're just in April.
What are you doing? Yeah, been over there for months. You should jump.
He's shy.
It's kind of hard to be on a competitive radio station.
Larry is the owner.
Lloyd and I did our part last month.
Oh, okay.
Lloyd and
So
I
you're
were
last
built
one?
in.
Okay.
I'll do it next one.
Yes, you did
Let
a
me,
fine job.
Friday.
We can get it.
I got hay down,
Oh, you see, that's how long it took him to come up with an excuse. Did you see that? The brain was really spinning there.
No, that's fine. I think.
I will try. Can I do that?
Yep, okay.
If it
So I can
rains
show
or
up.
something, I cut hay last night, but I was home tonight, I'll finish up and up the field. And when I try to open up outside. Yeah, see what.
Okay.
Try more.
No, that'll work. It'll be all right.
Lee camp.
These two will be in the hills and he's got,
Not going to leave Russ by himself complaining.
then your radio station will be doing very good.
All he do is bitch. Could mention Lloyd's gravel pit about 5 times, gets the average.
In what?
Big one radio.
I think I'll steer
Come on
clear.
down, bring the kids.
I'll steer clear on that. I think the land use plan's a great idea. I don't know if that's where we're at with land planning. Doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon.
Sorry, info out there for. Maybe.
Scott, would you like to attend the NEPA training?
There you go. That'll give you rider's crowd.
It's in Cheyenne this time.
It's in Cheyenne.
We just got back from China.
And now, when is it?
In August, I think is what I saw. That's the same one you and I had
It's this
last
fall.
year.
Yeah. August 25th.
It was.
It's good. It's good.
Okay.
It was also, it's more frustrating at this point to run all the hoops that we done. Did you get that email for a t-shirt?
That's it.
What are these? Oh, okay. So,
Funding request contract.
right, I just, I don't sign
Did I,
the ones that, the meetings, that's something.
The minutes, they're in here now, you march out. Yep.
It was very informative. It's a long day, but. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Susan, you're letting Bill know it's not gonna happen.
Yes, and you were, said he's fine with it.
Let the other folks know that they might have a little extra time.
Yes, that it'll be good for, they'll all be here 10 minutes early
Good,
anyway, so I was like. Sure.
That's the variance. You can see this.
Right, you've seen.
Preliminary.
This is the variance on the two.
Yes.
How many times I gotta sign this MetLife thing?
Well, like six
Just one-
different spots, I know, isn't that unreal?
Just one more time.
When I seen that, I was like,
Turn on the
oh,
page.
I love this. My
There you
apologies.
go. Yes. Oh, just turn.
Thank you very much. Scan and send back to him. Great group though, by the way, but they were so helpful. We did a little 30-minute Zoom meeting with them. They were
You get
awesome.
rider's credit for that.
So
Stamp.
Your stamp out.
Now we'll put it out to the employees, what the costs and all that will be, because they'll figure that out on their own. On the dental plan. So now we can move forward.
Next up, we've got public hearing on the Patriot variance request. Kim, take it away.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just as a reminder, this is for a proposed subdivision. It's the Patriot Major, and it's just on the west side of Powell. And that major subdivision has only been through sketch plan review with P&Z. The applicant is Jim Nicholson. This property is located in the Powell planning area, and the zoning district is GRP. So Mr. Nicholson sent in an application on June 29th of this year for a variance request. And he's asking a variance from lot frontage standards of chapter 3 in our regs. And what that does, it requires a minimum lot frontage of either 100 feet or 35 feet if the lot or lots are on a cul-de-sac. In this case, proposed lots 6 and 7 of this subdivision do not meet the minimum 100-foot frontage requirements, and they're not on a cul-de-sac. And Mr. Chairman, just another note, we also, when looking closely at this, we looked at possibly the potential that the standard for lot lines also are not being met. Those standards are, lot lines are supposed to be, or it's recommended that they be on right angles or as close to that as possible. And our determination is it looks like the lot lines between 5 and 6 and between 6 and 7 are not quite on a lot right angle. So our request is if you approve the frontage variance, that you also approve the lot line variance when they're not on right angles. The zoning district, as I mentioned, it's in GRP. On page 2, we have the purpose for a variance in a paragraph. We have the applicability of the variance. We have the procedure for a variance. Part of that is public hearing notice, and we are in a public hearing notice, and we did notice it appropriately. This property is lot 11 currently of the Cody subdivision. Again, it's just west of Powell. And figure 1 shows the current sketch plan of this proposed major subdivision. And figure 2 shows the proposed frontage of those lots. And you can also see the lot lines between 5 and 6 and 6 and 7. Again, they don't appear to be at substantially right angles. But again, that's something we ask for you to vary. This legal notice was in the Powell Tribune. As I said, legal notice requirements were met. We notified agencies as appropriate. Public Works responded. They said they're in agreement with the applicant regarding the request for this variance. The Public Works noted that this low road, which will be Cora Lane, most likely, is low speed and low volume road. It's on a 90-degree bend and essentially will function the same as if it were a cul-de-sac. However, Public Works does not want a cul-de-sac in this proposed subdivision. On April 5th, Public Works submitted additional comments. Again, Public Works said that these 2 subdivisions, should Patriot be approved, would be best served by connecting Cora Lane. The road should continue from Colby into Patriot. They're again opposed to a cul-de-sac, and Public Works is in favor of granting this variance request. Treasurer said property taxes are paid. Mr. Chairman, we've not had any public comments. In terms of the variance standards, you know there are 4 that are supposed to be met. One is there are special circumstances. I would just like to summarize what the applicant said. The applicant said the developer could make a cul-de-sac and meet the minimum lot frontage, but Park County Public Works, neighbors, and the developer don't want to see the cul-de-sac. It'd make access to the lots more difficult, they believe. The second option would be to change the lot lines to get 100-foot frontage. The applicant said this would make the lot shapes more irregular. Our response is, for this one criteria, technically there really aren't special circumstances that are peculiar to this land. Obviously, lot 1 of Colby is not land that is unique or unusual, similar to other property. However, we also said, given the goal of connecting Colby and Patriot, should Patriot be approved by continuing Cora Lane and realizing no one wants a cul-de-sac, this variance request appears to be in harmony with frontage requirements for low-speed, low-volume roads. That's one of our responses. Number 2, circumstances or conditions are such that the strict application of the regulations would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of the land. The applicant said the requirement of 100-foot frontage should not apply to subdivisions per issues already discussed. and requiring 100-foot would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of the land in terms of these lots and the subdivision. The applicant said granting of the variance is in harmony. We responded, there are technically no circumstances that cause the strict application of the regs to deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of the land. Obviously, this land does not have to be in a subdivision, and the subdivision could be redesigned. However, after consulting with Public Works, our department feels like the proposed frontage design appear to be best suited for this development. Number 3, granting of the variance is necessary for the reasonable use thereof. The applicant said, I'm summarizing, granting the variance is consistent with Park County Public Works and landowners and the developer, and it's been the best interest of continuation of core lane. Our response, again, granting of the variance is technically not necessary for the reasonable use of the land. However, granting the variance appears to be a reasonable solution to this frontage configuration. Number 4, granting of the variance is in harmony with purposes, intent, regulations, not compromise the land use plan, is consistent with public health, safety, and welfare. The applicant said essentially that's true. We said granting of the variance appears to be consistent with optimal frontage design and is in harmony with general purposes intent of the regulation. We don't feel granting this variance would be injurious to anyone. And Mr. Chairman, otherwise we have findings and we have one recommended condition. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. We have a recommendation that you approve this variance request.
Any questions for staff? Mike?
I'm looking at it, and was the master plan for the road to always go to loop through the two subdivisions?
That's my understanding.
So the people that live in the other subdivision at the end of that are looking at Hildebrand and Clemson.
Colby.
Now at the end of cul-de-sac, or a cul-de-sac at the end of theirs, and they're now going to have a through road, and they're aware and they've been contacted of the public hearing and everything as well.
I'm sure they're within that 660 feet. So my guess is those people you speak of.
Well, I guess like they knew when they bought this route, that the road may continue on through.
Yeah, my understanding was the plan was for this lot to someday be developed and for that road to continue in a horseshoe
Okay,
shape.
that was the original plan. Okay, well, it makes sense. I just, if there was the fact of a cul-de-sac in one and a cul-de-sac in the other, and if people bought at the end of the road, I would be concerned. If they were aware of it.
And currently, that's a gravel road that goes through the Kobe subdivision right now, like Mackenzie's.
Commissioner Mangold, I know it's been made to public works standard. I don't know if it's chip seal or if it's gravel. I think it was gravel. I think it is chip now. It was gravel, but it's been chip sealed.
This was part of the original plan when we designed the water system for Kobe sub, it was that it would continue and go on through, so it's been there for a lot of years.
Well, I don't see that plan. All I see is the new plan. That's why.
Okay. Public hearing. Do you have any public comment?
Mr. Chairman, I move to close public hearing.
Second.
Moving second to close public hearing. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to approve the variance request.
Second. Moving seconded. Further discussion?
I have a request.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman. We have the variance maker. I just want to verify that you're good with making redesigning to 90-degree corners.
No.
So are we approving with condition of the 90, because that isn't the condition written. Correct?
So what we would
90-degree property line
Yeah.
corner.
Yeah, well, the variance request is a variance form, that requirement of having 100-foot frontage. And we also believe that 2 of the lot lines are not at substantially right angles.
I understand.
We would like you also to vary that.
That's my question.
Yeah. So that's part of the variance request.
That is part of the variance.
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
And you're not
It is.
happy with that.
No, I am.
Oh, you are happy.
Yes.
Yes. I thought you wanted me to do 90-degree angles. No, I'm happy with the variance request, yes, that's what the applicant wanted. And to follow up on your last question, the homeowner association from Cope subdivision came into our last meeting and wanted to make sure that it was gonna be a through street, not a cul-de-sac. So that's why we changed a little bit, because we could have met that requirement on a cul-de-sac, but we can't meet it when we try to do that 90-degree angle. And Cope subdivision has some of those, they're not at 100 foot either on their corner either, so trying to keep matched with it, so.
All right,
Okay.
further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
We might as well just keep rolling, since the next one's not a public hearing. We've got, Park County Planning Zone Planner 2, Kim Dillon, Kiskin, minor subdivision, final plat review 52.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the applicant is Mark Kisgan, and this property is in the GR20 zoning district. The planning area is Clark. We did receive the application for this on July 6th of this year. You saw the final plat in figure 1. The requested action is the approval of what will be a 2-lot minor subdivision. Each lot is approximately 20 acres. This one we did, as you know, we did classify this, and I probably said this before when you saw the sketch plan, but we did classify this as a minor because this lot was an exempt remainder when the Riker simple was created in 05. As a result, we had to count those 2 lots in, whether it's a simple, minor, or major. So if this is approved, 3 lots would have been created from the original tract of record. The location of this property, it's in Clark, Wyoming. It's south on the south side of Road 8DE and on the west side of County Road 8WC. And it has an address, the property has an address of 168 Road 8DE. I mentioned this is in the GR20 zoning district. The lot sizes are consistent with that zoning. In terms of neighboring land use, we have primarily residential surrounding this. There are some subdivisions around this, including to the north and to the west. And there is, I believe, some ag land just to the east. Yes, that's correct. Topography, you see that in figure 4. It's relatively flat. And if I remember right, the vegetation there is primarily just native. Just native grasses and shrubs and probably sagebrush. No notice is required because this is not a public hearing. We did see one written public comment. You've already had a chance to see that came in before the sketch plan review. In terms of your review, your review of the sketch plan, that occurred on June 15th. You had some recommended conditions. You can see those on page 5. Number 2 was an approved long-term noxious weed management plan. That has been submitted. That was approved by Mary. Another condition was the notice of the Wyoming Right to Farm and Ranch Act. That is on the final plat. And another one was the note on the final plat that indicating that wells must be approved by the state. That is also on the final plat. Plat Review Committee looked at this electronically on and around July 19th. Changes and corrections were identified. And then we received the corrected final plat on July 19th. Mr. Chairman, we have findings and we have one condition that we'll recommend. And we're happy to answer questions.
Questions for staff? No questions.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve. Simple subdivision, sketch for minor subdivision, 52, final plat.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. You're on a roll, man.
Thank you, commissioners. All right, thank you, Colleen.
I am gonna give a little time, because this one, even though it's not a public hearing, we're rolling quite a bit ahead of time, so. Would you expect anyone on Reynolds?
Steve Fullwiler probably.
Probably the surveyor.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be
There
surprised.
might be some questions on that one, so. Chairman's prerogative.
Mr. Chairman, I think I would like to cancel their offer.
Not Henry did, but St. John.
Oh, yes. That's right.
Still like to see people telling that. With a little laser.
My road is.
Yeah.
Quarter mile to the north, goes to the river.
Oh,
It's just an access along that pivot. It's there, it goes back to our house. It's on the north side of the gas pier. It's not named, it's just a driveway, so it's hard to know, but Nez Pierce and then it's.
When we're talking about property, all the North Fork,
Right.
South Fork.
I
Yeah.
could just give Ken more
We're
than.
six, yeah.
Talking about whether we have a map up there.
Throw out the screen every time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lately, it's
Yeah. Leave it down.
Yeah. We typically know where the properties are located, because we go out and see them, but you all,
Well,
maybe
unless
all
we-
don't, sometimes you do, but sometimes you don't.
Right, unless we drive to it, it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
Big tower. I think we got the players here on the next one, so go ahead and run with the Reynolds Simple Subdivision Final Plat Review 275.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the applicant for this proposal is Steve Reynolds. This property is in the GR5 zoning district. The planning area is Cody local. We did receive an application from Mr. Reynolds on July 13th of this year. You can see in figure 1, the final plat, and the applicant requests approval of this, which will create 2 lots. One is 7.74 acres and one lot will be just over 5 acres. The location of this property it's approximately 6 miles northeast of Cody. It's a half mile east of Highway 14A, and this parcel does have an address of 4950 14A. And you can see in figure 2, it's how it's relative to Cody, and you see a picture of the property. In terms of zoning district, I mentioned this is in the GR5. These lot sizes are consistent with that zoning district. Neighboring land uses, they're identified in figure 3. There is a subdivision just to the south of this. However, the properties to the north and northeast are agricultural. Otherwise, there's some residential property around this, or residential uses around this. In terms of site characteristics, this proposed subdivision, this property does have a primary residence and 2 small outbuildings currently, and there is a small wastewater system. And all these existing structures and permitted structures are located on proposed lot 1. The topography is relatively flat. This property is not within a mile of any municipality, so that review is not required. Public hearing is not required because obviously this is a final plat review. You see our agency, all the agencies we've notified and responses we've gotten back. we did get a response back from Fire District number 2, the post office, and Park County School District number 6, saying that they could essentially provide services. Garland Light and Power said they have the capacity to serve both lots. Park County Weed and Pest, Mary did initial inspection. She found noxious weeds, but however, given the infestation level, she said a plan will not be required. Black Hills Energy responded, they have a main along 14A, and they said service to this property would require a main. Of course, this isn't simple, and so utilities, the extension of utilities are not required. Code Conservation District, they provided a soils report and summarization letter. The Park County Treasurer said taxes are currently paid. Park County Public Works, they responded with an email and several, or at least one letter. They mentioned access from 14A. They requested evidence of an easement. That easement exists, and we do have a copy of that. Originally, Public Road, and I know Brian is here, so he may have comments. Public Works originally said a road name is recommended but not required. They said no improvements are required for the private road. However, and they said should these lots be further divided, an access road must be improved to public works standards. GR5, I don't believe means it's possible to subdivide these further. No, I take that. Well, it is possible. No, it is not. No, they cannot be subdivided further given their GR5. Otherwise, Public Works said they recommended at the time, and this was back in early June, they recommended a shared road maintenance agreement. We also recommend that. You did see that as one of the conditions that we recommend. My understanding is our regs don't require it in this case, but I think we highly recommend it. And Public Works said no runoff and erosion control plan is needed. Wyoming Department of Transportation, they do have an access permit for this, so access does exist. Heart Mountain Irrigation District, they have received a water distribution plan, and they did share with us on July 19th that fees are paid in full and that plan has been approved. So that is all complete. We did not get a response from Game and Fish. We've not had any public comments. Planning and Zoning recommended approval of this. They looked at this on June 16th. Some of their conditions, number 2, they recommended road names. I already talked about what Public Works said. Road name is not is recommended but not required. Number 3 was a review and recommendation from Heart Mountain Irrigation District. That has occurred. We did get their approval and fees have been paid. Their 4th one was a note on the final plat about wells being approved by the state. That condition has been met. There was another condition from them, note on the plat regarding water quality. However, we do have a new water quality test that did not find coliform. And number 6 was improvement of access road to county standards. That condition has been met. And number 7 is Wyoming Ranch Farm and Ranch Act. That condition has been met. Plat Review Committee met on July 26th. They had some minor correction and changes. Then we got a corrected final plat back on July 29th. You see on the bottom of page 8 all the submissions for final plat. Top of page 9, final plat review. We do have some findings that we mentioned that we've illustrated in the staff report. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have a condition we're recommending about a road maintenance agreement. And we're happy to answer any questions you might have, Mr. Chairman.
One question on page 11 where you recommended staff condition.
Yeah.
Have they met number 1 yet?
They have not. No, there is not, to my knowledge, there is not an approved road maintenance agreement.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, Brian Edwards, Park County Public Works County Engineer. Just wanted to kind of clarify, since the letter that we wrote on that, on the road and the naming the road standards, after talking with the applicant and the applicant's surveying consultant, the way it exists right now, it's a shared driveway, essentially. It's got a 60-foot easement so that it's set up for if there is subdivision in the future. That's a good thing. So that's in place that a road could be developed there. Essentially, the driveway would continue as how it's always been. There's about a 14, 15-foot wide gravel or road surface that's in the north side of that easement that goes all the way down and accesses the Reynolds property. And it's my understanding that that one of the property owners that goes through, one of the farming neighbors, that they maintain that road, always have and want to continue to have control of that road. The applicant could talk about that further, but we're at the condition where I said we're going to need to recommend naming the road. We could, if that's what they and the other landowners want to do. It's not required or necessary at this time. It's essentially a shared driveway. So to us, they've really met all of our requirements, and the deal about a shared maintenance agreement, I think the applicant, willing to participate should that ever come to that point. But at this point, trying to get other neighbors to come into an agreement at this point is very difficult to do. And like I said, it sounds like no imminent plans to subdivide any further. It's going to remain farmland. And so I think it'll continue to be maintained as it has the last 10, 15 years, but the applicant may want to speak on that.
So basically you're saying is, and then we don't need condition number 1.
That's my recommendation.
Okay.
Mr. Keel. Mr. Chairman, I agree, although I do think that the idea is great, and it would be good to have some type of HOA or some agreement with your neighbor for the maintenance of the road. That's good, but I don't feel that we should put a requirement that's not within our development standards as a condition. So I move to approve subdivision, simple subdivision, final plat review 275, striking condition number 1.
Moving second. Is there further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, that would be it. Steve.
Works great.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming
And
down.
for Steve, this is Steve Reynolds too. He's the owner, so he appreciates it very much. Yeah, and you.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thanks, guys.
54.
Appreciate it.
54.
Do you expect anyone on tips?
I thought maybe,
That's what I saw a problem with.
I thought Mr. Fullwiler would be here, but it's Tom, it's Mr. Reed, Ed Reed, who was the surveyor. I don't know. I thought Steve might stay.
Let's make sure it's not
Just on one line.
I was wrong.
Well, we're just running a little ahead of schedule. I didn't want to jump the gun if you weren't here. So.
Okay, thanks.
So next up, we have the fifth simple subdivision final plat review 274. Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the applicant is Mr. Fitz. This property is located in the GR5 zoning district the planning area is Lower South Fork. We did receive an application for the final plat on July 16th of this year. You see the final plat in figure 1. I will note, and you know this though, we just got a new version of the final plat on, I believe it was on July 29th. That was shared with you. My understanding, it was just some minor corrections. The requested action is to obviously approve this simple subdivision. 2 lots will be created. One will be 18.87 acres and one will be 18.88 acres, both for residential use. And just a note, Mr. Chairman, the maps we have in figures 2 and 3, they suggest that the property is bigger, but that property to the northwest of the canal, that has already been recently separated by a 35-acre exemption. So that property northwest of the canal is not part of this subdivision. In terms of the location, it's located almost 2 miles southwest of Cody. It's on the west side of Highway 291 or South Fork Road. This property is unaddressed. The lot sizes proposed are consistent with the GR5 zoning district. In terms of neighboring land use, there are some residential uses in the area, including at least 1 subdivision. And there is agricultural land, I believe, just to the east. And then there's state of Wyoming property to the west and BLM land to the north. So federal land and state land surrounded in the vicinity. In terms of site characteristics, there are no structures on this property, basically vegetation, native vegetation. And as I mentioned, it's bordered on the northwest side by the Cody Canal. In terms of figure 4, we show topography, and Mr. Chairman, I apologize, I have a mistake. On page 4, we're talking about figure 4, and we're noting the change in elevation. And we talk about an elevation change from 5,300 feet to 5,400 feet. I said that's a 1,000-foot increase. I meant to say it's only a 100. But again, it's 100 feet change in approximately 2,300 feet. So I know elevation changes are relative, but there is some elevation changes on this property. This property is not within a mile of Cody, so municipal review is not required. No public hearing notice is required for this. Agency referrals have been met and made, and we've received responses. Fire District Number 2, Postal Service, and Park County School District 6 all responded they can provide services. Rocky Mountain Power said they have the ability to provide electricity should this be necessary. YDOT responded in the letter. They approved a residential access permit to this parcel. Park County Weed and Pest, Mary responded with a letter. She did initial review. Noxious weed species were found. She did require a weed management plan that has been approved, and we do have a copy of that. And I believe we shared that with you. Cody Canal responded. Property has water rights. The district, we said in our staff report, they're expecting a water distribution plan. They have responded to us saying that plan has been received and it's been approved. Northwest Rural Water commented, they currently have sufficient capacity to serve the 2 lots. Again, it's a simple, so utilities are not required. Cody Conservation District provided a summarization letter. Public Works responded saying it appears that the property has legal access, 40-foot wide. Treasurer said that Park County taxes are currently paid. TCT responded they have fiber optic service in the area. They can provide internet and VoIP phone to this address. Black Hills Energy responded they can provide natural gas. They have a main along South Fork Highway. Game and Fish responded they have no comments or concerns regarding aquatic resources. Another response they sent us, they said they continue to be concerned by the number of subdivisions. We've not received any public comments. Planning and Zoning reviewed this on June 16th. They recommended approval. Condition number 2 was a review and recommendation from Cody Canal. That condition has been met. Number 3 was a notice of the Wyoming Right to Farm and Ranch Act. That condition has been met. And number 4 was a note on the final plat talking about roads or ditch crossings have legal weight loads, and that condition has been met. That note on the final plat. Final plat review committee met on July 14th. There would have been possible changes made, identified, and corrections. Then we did, as I said, we did get a final plat that with corrections on July 19th. And then again, we just received one on July 29th. We have findings we've identified, and we recommend 3 conditions. And we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, once again, number 1 condition about the irrigation distribution plan, has that been met?
Yes, yeah. Commissioner Tilden, that has, I believe I said that has been met. Yeah. So number 1 is unnecessary.
Just curious, what does the plan say? I mean, are they dictating how it's irrigated, sprinkler or flood or?
So I don't remember looking specifically at this one, but normally those plans are supposed to show where the water is coming from, where it goes, and how much is allotted to, I guess in this case, each of the 2 lots.
Well, I'm just curious whether Cody Canal is following through. Tom, can you answer that question?
Oh, you mean in terms of fees? I don't know, Commissioner Tilden.
We're gonna place 2 12-inch head gates, approximately 100 feet from each west corner. And then there'll be pipe, and it'll either be gravity sprinklers or electric pump sprinklers.
Is that a requirement by Cody Canal?
Yes, the sprinkler use, so that there are no wastewater ditches to have to be dealing with from the downstream people.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Tilden, did you ask about their fees, initiating fees?
No.
No, okay.
Further question?
Kim, did I understand you also on condition 2, at time that the applicant will place a note on the final plat stating that roads and water and ditch crossings hold legal weight loads? I thought you said that had been met.
That is my understanding, unless I missed that. Yeah, I believe that. No, I apologize. I misread that. That condition has not been met.
Okay, that's what our paperwork said. So, okay, so we still need condition 2 and condition 3.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, then with that question, I thought it was met, and I wasn't gonna bring it up, but was that condition initially put on because of the thought that the lot was bigger? Because in the plat, the boundary is the canal, so I don't see how that would really pertain to these 2 lot sizes on the plat.
Yeah, you mean in terms of the water crossing?
Right, these 2 lots don't cross the canal, so I mean, is it really relevant anymore?
That could be true. I believe, though, that condition was recommended by Fire District number 2. Does that sound correct?
But these 2 lots don't have to cross the canal.
Well, yeah, but there's still load limits, and I'm not sure what road, what they may cross.
Mr. Chairman, I can shed some light on that. That part of that was from the fire district. They've asked us that anytime there is a crossing that relates to where they may have to go across for emergency services for houses or anything like that, that we have some language for crossing. To answer your question, Mr. Teal, that line actually goes to the center of that Cody Canal. So it does front across the 2 lots, but that line is, if it went just up to the canal and stopped, we're probably flexible on not having to have anything, but because that easement actually goes to the middle of that canal, we thought that Cody Canal should have some. And they've asked us too, the Cody Canal has asked us to, make sure that there's a requirement to get their approval on any crossings that relate to that. So it's really a note for further development as that thing goes through. It's kind of iffy as it relates to this. I wouldn't have even said anything except that it does go to the middle of the canal.
Mr. I understand where you're going and protected, but everything to the north and west of that canal is unplatted. It's not part of this plat.
Correct.
So I don't see what that has relevant to these 2 properties because they don't cross. cross over that canal, it says on there, the center line, canal's the property boundary for lot 1 and 2. So I don't care if it's on there, if the applicant has no problem putting it on there, then I don't care either, but it's irrelevant to the final plat.
Tom? Go ahead, Tom.
The reason, I mean, Morris and Marley recommended that we go to the center line of the canal so that if anybody on that north side wanted to ever apply for water rights, that they had that right to do it. That's the only reason it's to the center. It's got nothing to do with the road.
Do you got any issues with placing a note on that final plat that we're talking
What
about?
we're just talking about right here, not at all.
Okay.
And
There we go.
And Mr. Chairman, on the latest plat we got, which was, I believe, was on July 29th, note number A does talk about legal load limits. So perhaps that condition has been met.
Okay,
With that, Mr. Chairman, make a motion that we approve the fifth simple subdivision final plat rating number 274 with 2 conditions listed.
kind of moving from the.
There's 3 listed, so I'm doing conditions 2 and 3.
2 and 3, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay. Yep. All right. Moved and seconded for further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
55.
Thank you, Colleen.
You're welcome.
Next up, we do have a public hearing. It starts at 1:50 or 11:15, excuse me.
It is.
It's not getting her.
You're good.
results.
You're all done. Go back to work.
You're crazy.
I know.
Looks like we got a lot of folks here. I'm gonna go ahead and open up the public hearings. Continuation of public hearing on the Buck Creek's major subdivision preliminary plat review. We were in the middle of public comment when we had to cut it short the other day. Mr. Spencer George was making comments. Now, Spencer, you've submitted them in writing. Do you have anything else to add to that at this time? Go ahead and you can go ahead and stand up if you like. Sure. Just state your name.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Spencer George. So I'm a 3rd generation dairy farmer here under Hart Mountain. And so, yeah, I have submitted a writing and I could go through it again.
I think, unless the
You
board
all read it?
I've read it. Do you feel he needs to restate what he's already put in writing?
You know, I don't, if you would like that submitted, just so it goes in the public record.
It's submitted, it's submitted as public comment, so
So,
I'm
yeah,
saying it's not necessary.
so, yeah, I guess if you've all read it and understand it, I could, hopefully don't keep going. I guess I'd like to emphasize the importance of this decision. This is a pinnacle or a tipping point on our subdivisions that are taking place here in our Hart County area. It's aggressive and by both the number of homes and its productive land that we're talking about taking out of production. And so whatever you decide on this, it's really going to be a precedent for the upcoming many subdivisions that are going to be coming down the pipe. I'd like to express the importance of trying to continue to promote agriculture here in the nation. We're definitely fighting a lot of competition now. We're being outpriced as producers and purchasing land. I don't know how we're going to curb that. But if we continue to subdivide, it will be impossible for us to continue to purchase land. This year alone, we've lost losing 60 acres next year due to subdivisions that I farm personally right now. And that's farm we can never get back. And so that's pretty important. And I also, as we look at the current events taking place here in the nation, this watershed that we are under, this is shown watershed, is the most reliable watershed in the Western United States. And we have something very valuable. We have good farmland, reliable water. That water and land are just, they're so critical. And I hate to waste either of them to homes. And as I said earlier, 17% of Park County is irrigated. That means 83% of Park County is not. And I think we should try to, I know people want to live here, help them build in those areas that are not irrigated. Kind of like the Rolling Hills subdivision up to AD. There's a lot of little good examples of that where there's homes, beautiful homes in the hills where we're not taking out good crop production. Anyway, I hope you can consider those ideas that I've had.
So Spencer, I appreciate your passion. I appreciate your wanting to come here and visit with us. One thing, a question I have, and I was down picking up a load pipe down at up from a farmer in Loveland, and you look at, I'm looking at all kinds of development around him and asking them how they were dealing with it. And he said, there was current regulations that required subdivisions to set aside X amount of acres for every acre that's subdivided as farm ground. And he said it sounded good on paper, but he said what they were having happen there was they were having these little parcels that were really non-farmable. They were designated as ag land, but they were non-farmable. But would you see something like that being beneficial in a situation like this?
Well, unfortunately, no. As I mentioned in my writing, two of the three farms that are going to be subdivided this next year, the one is actually the Reynolds that you just talked about. That one I will continue to farm because it's off to the side and it doesn't impede with how we're going to irrigate. The other two, I have to drop them. They're basically cutting up to the center, leaving me two triangles, and they're so inefficient. We were going to put a circle on that farm actually. So due to inefficiencies, labor is a problem. And so I'm paying people to go out there and irrigate. And every time you turn the tractor around, you're losing time and efficiencies as well. And so we've informed the owner we just can't continue to farm this property like that. So, for a good example, let's say you have a good, nice circle center of irrigation, corners are always a hard thing for us to farm. And so for us as a dairy farm, we pile manure in those corners where we put the feedlot. So that's the inefficient area that would be good for subdivisions. And so, that's an option. When it comes to flood irrigating, when you got irrigation going this way and you cut right through the center of it, the land only flows one way, so it makes it.
Just have one other question. In all that you guys have watched, and I live next door to one, so I know that works, but you did flood irrigate, next to me for a lot of years, and then with the pivot. Do you know what the process is or how you check and see what that does to the water table? Because I know the water table in our area has certainly gone down due to the efficiency of the pivot versus the old flood irrigating. So you see that happening in these areas too.
Oh, that is a great concern even for us as farmers. Because we rely on a lot of wells to feed our cattle and ourselves. And so we've noticed in a lot of areas on our ag lands where there used to be numerous springs, now where there's pivots, there's fewer springs. So for sure that the water table is going down. But once again, we come to the efficiency of pivots, and it's a catch-22. And that's the same thing when it comes to subdivisions. Usually they're required to sprinkle. So you put 23 homes on a big parcel such as this, you're going to have water table issues. Because flood irrigation is the only way you can actually refill that profile. So.
Thanks, Mitch.
Mr. Chairman, a couple things. I just wanted to mention that since the last public hearing, we've received 2 sets of public comments. You've had a chance to see those. One was from Mr. George.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. We received one from Ms. Kirk, and do you have anything to add to what you sent to us in writing?
Well, I would
Go ahead and
just,
state your name just to be
Alexandra Kirk, I would just urge the council to consider the fact that, this new evidence about the drought and how serious this is to our community and how important, how significant any decision that you make here will be with respect to what happens to Cody with regard to the forecasted drought situation.
Further public comment? Anyone out there, go ahead and state your name, and you want to come forward. Some of us that have a hard time hearing, I appreciate that.
I believe you can hear me if you
All right,
can.
that's great.
My name's Tim Lassiter. I did some research on this as Carol Armstrong contacted me. And I do feel like that this probably is one of the more precedent-setting situations you've been in a while in subdivisions. This area, you know, when you come out of the surrounding areas and you come down, you see the green along the river and you see the farmland and you know that you look at all the surrounding land around it, it's a very, very small part. He said like 17%. And you just, the way the drought is headed, the way that it's been the last several years and getting worse, it concerns me that any of our farmland is being taken out. You can build houses about anywhere we've seen in multiple states around us and here. Some of them aren't ideal locations, but you can. But when you take farmland out, that farmland is probably gone forever. There's no getting it back. And I think it's something that needs to weigh heavily on your decision, because without that resource, we don't really have anything.
See a young man there and hide out in the back.
Sorry about that. My name's Alex Murphy. I guess I'll come up here so people can see me. I guess I just want to give my 2 cents. I feel like this is a precedented one. I'm a young farmer trying to begin farming, for one, and I know that the ag lands that we have today were created years and years ago. They've been built up, so the different classifications of ground are now kind of evened out where they're all kind of the same. And there's no new virgin land being put into farm ground. So one of my big concerns is if we let all these lots and lots go into subdivisions, that where's my farmland for me in the future going to be coming from here in the county? But I'm a 4th generation farmer here, following even sheep herders and whatnot before that. And so I guess that's kind of where my concern is if we continue to let subdivisions come in and take over our good farm ground, that I'm not going to be able to continue to have a 5th or 6th generation to have farming.
Thank you. Further public comment? Yes, sir.
My name is Wayne Whip, and I'm from the Black Hills of South Dakota. My wife and I just moved here about 3 years ago. And speaking from experience in Spearfish, South Dakota, and many of you have been in that area, I'm sure, to go to the Sturgis Bike Rally. And yeah, so you got a little biker background. Let me tell you what happened to that community. All the farmland was sold for homesteading or small ranchettes or whatever you want to call it. They all ended up to be developments, basically, taking valuable farm ground. So what used to be, when I moved there in 1973, all that farm ground was turned into residential areas. Consequently, from basically the Wyoming border all the way to Rapid City now, all that farmland is now residential property. So what happened there was all the rich people from wherever they came from, you name the place, they all come from there, have been vacationing there for years, want to live there. And so that's what happens. They come in with their money, raise the cost of land, so these young people can't farm or ranch anymore, eliminate all that ag land. And so it was hard enough to farm and ranch in that community already. And then when you raise the price of land with people that come in here with a lot of money, it puts the little guy out of business or or he can never even start. So from that scenario that I moved out here to get away from, I see it happening here. And I caution you, proceed with caution, because that's what could happen here if you allow these people to move in. Now, having lived here for 3 years, I find out that the winters are a little rougher sometimes. And these people moving in from these nice climates find that they don't like it here anymore. So they develop these places, make room for them. 4 or 5 years down the road, they decide they don't like it here. They've built multi-million-dollar homes or whatever that nobody can afford, and there they sit empty. That happened there also. So I caution you to proceed with caution as these people have exhibited their concerns. And so I've exhibited mine, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Further public comment? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I forgot to mention one thing. So my real struggle with this also has been, how do I tell somebody else how to use their land? You know, this is a free country, and that's been my biggest wrestle with all this. But as a dairy farmer, whenever I build a new milk barn, which I plan to do, or another living facility for my heifers, I have to basically apply and have planning and zoning, and the commissioners approve that. Then my surrounding neighbors as well will have to approve that. And so if we put a small town next to my operation, I'm gonna essentially have people next to me who don't comprehend nor appreciate agriculture. And that will possible. It can, yes, it can. I know that there's a provision saying they'll be notified or told that this is an ag zone they live in, but that's never stopped them in the past. I've had friends in that farm in Idaho and Utah now that were pushed out of California to there are other dairy farmers I've interacted with in different meetings. So, I mean, this is what happens is, even though everybody's aware that the dairy is there and they're gonna move around, eventually it gets on their nerves enough that they petition us out. And so for me to continue going forward and working in my ag zone freely, somehow all my neighbors need to also understand this is still an ag zone.
Okay, further public comment?
I'm Phyllis Prater. I happen to be a neighbor of Spencer George. And I have a short comment. I just want to reinforce what these young men have been saying. That particular field, we have a field just north of it, or I mean west of it. That particular field is a very productive field. It can grow at least 5 tons of hay per acre. I have worked as a beet truck driver on that field. It is very productive. And to see that good of a resource taken out of our community, that does hurt the farmers community. So, you know, I'm not against houses, but maybe they could go to the alkali fields and the rocky gravel pit. So we like our farm ground. Thank you.
Further public comment? Mr. Smart.
I guess
Please state your name.
Brian Schumar, the landowner, or portion, I mean, my family owns it. So, you know, I feel sympathy with all the comments. You know, we also have farm and ranch up behind the Japanese internment camp that my family lives on currently. But this piece of property, which we bought now probably going on 3 years, you know, it was on the market for 2 years, sat there. And through kind of what I thought I saw coming, you know, I talked my family into purchasing this, knowing that, you know, it's a GRP zone, 1 acre minimums. And living here for 29 years, which I have, I don't want to create a nuisance. I want to make something nice. But there's also a lot of people, when I moved here, our dream is to have a ranchette, or have a little something where, you know, you don't have a neighbor right at your rooftop. Be able to have 5, 7, 10 acres, have some horses. We've made the covenants very nice, but yet somebody could build a 1,200 square foot apartment in a shop house. You know, it's got to have some 3 roof pitches. It's in our current housing market. We just signed on a housing team to try to find lower income housing. And how do we do that if we don't have some density in some spots? Now, we bought that knowing it was GRP zoned, and we can meet and exceed everything that the county requires to put a subdivision in there. The nice thing about this, we've actually, from what I understand, we've made it easier to do a simple subdivision. It's a shorter process today than it was 6 months or a year ago, right? It's like one less meeting, or if nobody contests it, they can pretty much stamp it and move forward. Well, 23 lots put up, if we don't have these and 23 people go somewhere else where every farmer is taking the corners off their pivots, the big ranchers, they're splitting those and selling them in a simple subdivision that most likely is attached to a gravel road that the county owns and maintains. So if we put 23 families out in the county, that's 23 phone calls that you guys get for snow removal, 23 phone calls you get for grading the road. All of that extra, or to blacktop the road, because now you have the density that you need to do that. We have put the density, 23 lots attached to a highway, a state-owned highway. So the expense to the county is very minimum for the density that we're giving. You know, we're not going to the 1.5 acre minimums. We're trying to keep it nice. You know, the county's not getting those phone calls to gravel, to blacktop and all that. So there's very low cost to the county, but there's a high reward as far as, you know, tax dollars, whatever that may be, those 23 families spending money in Cody. The cost of construction is going to supply jobs for all kinds of contractors and subcontractors. And it's going to, all the materials bought in Cody or Powell, supplying all of our jobs that we have for Cody looking for jobs for this area. And we're trying to do some of that, or at least our part. Yeah, there's some benefits to us. No different than Mr. George's dairy farm he has to do, or when he put in the cellular tower that I'm sure that he had to fight for. You know, nobody wants to see progress. He doesn't want to see progress, but yet he is part of progress. You know, so I just hope that you guys see that this is this property we bought zoned for it. We've met and exceeded all county standards, and we hope to get your support in this.
We've heard a lot of concerns about the water table.
Yep.
Punching 23 wells.
Yeah.
And I've seen it happen different places.
Yep.
When the Copper Leaf, when the flood irrigation shut down, there were some concerns there. Has there been a groundwater study done on that?
We did it. I mean, we sent everything to the state engineer's office, and all that's been done as far as I know. How about you, Scott?
What we did do is we talked to two well drillers, Scott Lewis with engineering surveying, but what we did is we talked to 2 well drillers, and before we were submitting the information to the DEQ, the one well that's on the site is 200 foot deep, but when we add up all the wells within a mile, the average depth was 60 feet. Coming back to the 2 well drillers, they basically said, man, we drill wells all the time. We can install wells on this site. The thing that this site has going for it is we're bordered to one side by the Garland Canal. I don't think the Garland Canal is going to be lined anytime soon. We're bordered to the south by Buck Creek, which flows water year round. It might be that we have to drill a little deeper, but your average depth was 60 feet. Even if we had to go to 100 feet, we could probably do wells on this side.
Well, and the other thing too, Lee, is, Mr. Commissioner, is on that property, there's between 7 to 10 different springs coming off of the field, and they're all winter long, running into Buck Creek. So I don't foresee well problems at all. So just like up the road, at Eagle Nest Creek, they're all about 60 feet in there as well.
Mr. Chairman, I would also say that after 20 some years with Northwest Rural Water, I can't tell you how many times people from Fieldness came in and said, can you guys
Yeah.
get water service out here?
Yeah,
Whether
but-
it's quality or quantity, I can't tell you on which houses, but there are concerns.
I know that part of that was that there was some not good quality water in that area. This one, there's more alkali over in that area.
Further public comment? Yes, sir. And then
Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the County Commission, my name is Brian Mick, M-I-C-K. I moved here between Powell and Cody, going on 6 weeks.
long timer.
Yes, sir. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska, and my wife and I plan to live the rest of our days here, hopefully at least a third of my life, God willing. I've witnessed, of course, in not only the Omaha area, but throughout Nebraska, progressive development and economic activity. And frankly, a lot of small towns across Nebraska and my home state of Kansas dying because the concentration is all ag related. And you're sitting here in a situation, and with our current administration, who knows what the revenues from the oil and gas industry are going to be going forward. If that's short, I'm not sure the ag producers necessarily want an increase in their taxes. There are people who want to move here for all the right reasons. And part of that is freedom and being able to exercise your legal rights with your property. And I would just submit that I've done one transaction with Mr. Schumar, and he was honorable. He delivered all the deliverables he said he would do, and he followed through on his commitments. And my brother and I have been involved in a lot of real estate transactions over the years. We turned an empty burnout house in Manderson on 290 acres into a beautiful property that a doctor from Boise bought with his wife and kids to race horses, and he's now at the hospital in Basin. That's what you want. I just met another couple last week. They both work for McKesson Drug. They're working remotely. There's going to be a lot more remote work. And instead of a negative brain drain, if you can have the housing stock to attract young professionals to this area, whether they're coming home instead of leaving the farm and going to college and staying in whatever city they went to school, I think that's a good thing. And Wyoming as a whole has shown a lot of progressive attitude. And I'm not talking AOC progressive, okay? I'm not a fan of that kind of progressive, but your recent cryptocurrency fintech regime that passed through Cheyenne is getting Wyoming significant positive exposure throughout, financial communities throughout the country. So my point is, I appreciate what folks are saying, and Alex and I met at the gas station in Ralston just a couple weeks ago, and he was very helpful and giving me some advice on pivots and that kind of thing. But there will be ag land available, and just because we're taking 60 or 100 acres to try to create an attractive subdivision, plus you have a trickle up theory, right? If these are $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 houses, I don't even know what's planned. It's not going to be all immigration like me. It's going to be locals who, given the current interest rate environment, might trade up to a nicer, newer house. They have more kids coming. They need the room, whatever it is. There'll be a trickle up theory that'll free up some housing stock on the lower ends for these service workers. I mean, there's, as I understand it, there's service workers living in Powell and points beyond because they can't find a place affordable here in Cody. So it positively affects the lower rungs of the housing stock and potentially the rental situation. So I'm just here. I know there's been a lot of negative comments. I have no, skin in this game, this particular approval process for this subdivision, but I'm here to tell you I would support that kind of economic activity. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say, my grandma has a piece of ground that we put pivots up on. That there was lots of springs on the surrounding hills. It took a few years, and now a lot of the springs are dried up. So saying that water's going to be running year round on springs down there on that hill is not necessarily true. It may not be evident at the first year or two, but then our CS, we tried getting the funding to fund those pivots, said that they won't touch it because it would mess with the water table, and it has. And so that's another huge concern, is just because the springs on that hillside run right now year round does not mean that in the next 3 or 4 years, they're not gonna start drying up.
That's true. Tim Lasser, just one other comment. I mean, in this country, I'm not sure where you find more ag land. It's not like it's a common occurrence here. You can look all around us. There's not a vast surplus of ag land. And there's not going to be more. I mean, there's a lot of these you can't farm, and you all know that. I mean, a lot of you work in areas where you realize that. That's why I say not as much about this subdivision, but the precedent that this sets can affect this town for many years to come. And I just ask you to take that into consideration.
Hi, Scott Rose, friend of engineering surveying. We keep talking about pivots. And pivots are basically a departure from gravity-fed irrigation. Pivots are basically pumps that they pump into the pivot. The pivot goes around. To say that we can't develop more land is really just not true. I just finished a water right transfer for a gentleman down the level. He took farmland that he had irrigated, put it on a pivot. We pivot right up against BLM property. So the idea that we can't create more land and irrigate more property when we're moving into a line of pivots is just not true. The last thing I'd like to say is that, we entered into this process after a property had sat for several years. And we represent the current owner, but what about the person who held that land for 2.5 years and couldn't sell it? Didn't have anybody step forward and say, I want to buy this piece of property. I want to farm this piece of property. And now everybody seems like this is the best property in the world. But it sat there for 2.5 years and no one decided it was worth it. We bought it for basically the reasonable price at the time. We knew what the regulations were. Based on the current regulations, we had complied with all the regulations. We've worked with YDOT, we've worked with the DEQ, we've worked with the state engineer's office. We've gone through all those hurdles. We've heard that this is ag land. We don't want to take it out of ag production. 25% of this land is prime ag land. We've got 129 acres. There's a bunch of land that's not prime ag land. We're just trying to develop to create these little pieces of heaven, if you will. If everybody could choose where they like to live, they would like to live in the best location, easy access, water. As far as we know, there's not going to be a problem with water. The quality of this water is good. It's a soft water. All I would say is we would expect that you would see if we comply with your regulations, and we met their zoning, that you would act in our favor.
Thank you. If we're gonna hear anything that's already been said, let's hold off on that. We're kind of running out of time, but if you got something new to add, feel free to do so. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Mary Murphy. I don't have a farming background, but I'm married to Alex. We have a 1-month baby. Was born and raised here in Wyoming, and we're talking a lot about.
We need you to speak up.
Sorry, I'm soft spoken. It sounds to me like I'm yelling right now, but no, you can hear me. I'm Mary Murphy, and I would like to talk about progression. It sounds as though what we're talking about, progression, isn't necessarily new houses going up. Progression is agriculture. I haven't known a lot about agriculture till I married Alex, but progression can be agriculture so easily. Strip tillage protects the ground from blowing away like it did in history. the farmland that we have now in our community produces so much more than it did before. And it'd be a shame to throw that away, to throw away that progress on that farm ground. To start over would be to start over completely. To the years that a farm ground has been farmed, makes the soil build up so that it can produce more and more. And that's what these farmers have done for years, is to build up the soil. And we're now breaking into new science that you can grow so much more on the same ground. And it would take years to take that BLM, which the wild horses run free on, and to turn that into the ground that we already have, basically. I mean, you can put houses on BLM and do just the same thing that you want to do right now. And to have that progress, because I'm not saying that's not progress. Just like Brian has said, that would be a great thing for people who want to have their place of heaven. But the farm ground that we have is such a wonderful thing. And that's what I'd like to say.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I don't know anything about farming.
Your name, please.
My name is Miriam Whiff, and I don't know anything about farming. But when you're talking about taking people's homes and living, that's wrong. Just because he wants to build a home to make it big and rich, and people come in and take the people's homes that they already built here, and they have a business, and you want to take that away from them to give it to somebody else when they can go somewhere else, when there is nothing else they can build on. That's wrong.
I don't think we're talking about taking anyone's home.
Well, you are, but taking their farm, their livelihood, their way of living. That's wrong. Where else are they going to go? Where else are they going to make a living? They can go somewhere else and build a home somewhere else. That is wrong. That's not what God wants us to do. He wants us to help each other. And I hope you make the right decision and let them keep their land. Because God gave it to them, and that belongs to them.
Thank you. Further, Spencer, one more time.
Sorry.
And your last.
All right, that's fine. As far as re-adjudicating water rights, we've dealt with that in the past. And so we've done pivots, and I have to basically take away from a adjudicated property that says it has water rights to move it over to a pivot. So I can't come up with new irrigatable land because under the Bureau of Rec, they only allow so much acreage of land that can be irrigated. So I can't just move a farm out to the Badger Basin and bring water to it. That's impossible. And so this is a limited resource and it needs to be protected is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a procedural request. And that is that when I submitted my first opposition, I guess I submitted it too late to have it uploaded into the public record. I don't know if that's been done.
It has been.
Okay.
Yes, we have yours.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Further public comment.
Mr. Chairman, I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Then second, close the public hearing. Well, we've got a major decision in front of us. It's up to the board. I'm just one, but I think we probably might have to digest all the public comments. I myself would. There's a lot of, like I say, it's Carol. There's a pretty major issue that we got in front of us. So,
Mr. Chairman, I agree that I need a little bit more time to think about what they've all said too, and the regulations, which have come up a couple of times. And I agree that we have sets of regulations that this meets in most criteria, but we also have some farm and ag statements in those regulations that I need to go back and look at. And it talks about taking farmland out of production and things. And I want to relook at that and see what those things say. So I'm really not comfortable right now.
Commissioner Field.
Yeah, if I could, I've got a quick question to the applicant or representative. It really doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about today. It's just point of curiosity on my part. As far as Heart Mountain Irrigation is concerned, your water distribution plan was approved on January 27th.
Correct.
I understand. And are they going to impose on you their new fee structure, which was put into effect on July 1st?
As far as I know, I haven't seen anything that said that they were because we were prior to that.
But you don't know.
I,
I would suggest
we're,
we find out, because with the new fee structure they had that went in July, with your 23 lot subdivision, it'd be around $22,000.
yeah. I'm pretty sure we don't have to, and if it is, then, because our plan's already approved through them and through the state. If it is, we'll absorb the $22,000 and put in what they recommend.
Other than that, Mr. Chairman, I would agree that there's some things I'd like to think about.
Mr. Teal.
Mr. Chairman, I have no problem waiting on the thing and put some more thought into this, but before you do, I would like to express my opinion.
I certainly hope, I'm not gonna stop you.
Get that very well made, hopefully, convince you guys one way or the other. And that is, this is definitely a major decision, one of the hardest, if not the hardest one that I've had since I became commissioner. And with that, I want to add, 3 years ago when I ran for commissioner, I had 4 different quotes on a little flyer that sat around, and I'd like to read that to you real quick. Just one of them that was by William Jennings Bryan, former U.S. Secretary of the Interior of State. Burn down your cities, leave our farms, and your cities will grow, will spring up again as if by magic. But destroy our farms, and grass will grow in the streets of every city in the country. Ag land is limited, regardless of what's being said. It's not, we're not creating anymore. I mean, not that it couldn't be done, but as Mr. George stated, water rights are very simple as where they have to be, where they get used. And, you know, it burns me to even see little simple minor subdivisions taken out of ag land. I can accept that because they're cornered on highly productive lots. This doesn't fit that criteria, and as Commissioner Overfield stated, you know, the ag overlay district within where this lies, we, within our regulations, we have every right to deny this. And that's all I want to say about this going forward. I think the ag community of Orange County is too important to start in setting a precedence like was mentioned before. It's still not going to be good. So, you know, I'm not saying I've made my mind 100%, but I'm 99% and you know where I'm standing.
Well, I'm not campaigning like as much as I hate the government gets involved and tell the farmer what to do, whether we've crapped on them quite a bit through the years. And for some of these farms and some of these farmers, all of a sudden they're being dangled $2 million. That's, you know, finally this is paid off for them. So the libertarian part of me says, keep the government out of it, let these people do what they're doing with their farmland. But if you're affecting a current farm, that's where I want to see, you know, we're hearing that you put this guy out of business, or is he going out of business, or is things going to be tougher for him, you know, up the road. Plus, we're hearing about the 91 Farm Act and how neighbors aren't, you know, supposed to allow these farmers to do their job, but they're still hearing about lawsuits, petitions, and all that coming up. And will he be protected from something like that? So I'm still split on it. I don't like government getting involved when somebody can do something with their property. If it does affect the neighbors, that's where my concern is. Well, we're gonna take it into consideration, try and get the decision knocked out here pretty quick. And
I don't think you actually finished the motion on closing the hearing.
oh, I did. I'm sorry.
You had a second, but then you didn't.
Okay, so the move and second closed public hearing. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, public hearing closed. Thank you, Dwight. So we'll get on it and have a decision shortly. But I appreciate everybody taking the time to come down and share their thoughts.
If I could, just because we have so many people interested in it. I'm going to be going to put this on the agenda for.
I'd like to have it done on August 17th.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I would just ask if anybody wants to be notified what time on the agenda, if you give Susan your email,
yep,
she'll notify you, just so everybody knows. So we will debating that at that point in time.
Commissioner Holyfield.
Just really quickly, I'm still gonna put in another plug for the land use plan.
Yes.
We're gonna put out an RFP and get a consultant on board to update the Park County land use plan, which is 22 years old, and some of these rights that we're talking about deal with that. So as we do that, we are going to be asking any and all Park County residents to be part of the committees in the area where you live to decide, what do you want to see? What do you want to help put in these regs, which is what we did 22 years ago in Park County in the committees. So as you see those ads in the newspaper for committees being formed, or if you don't see anything, call Susan or call the planning and zoning office and find out what's happening. It'll be a couple months before we get started on that, after we get the RFP out. Please be part of that so that we know what the citizens of Park County want and where. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you both.
West of Philly. Okay, your son's in the wheelchair.
Oh, I'm
Yes, yes. Well, I don't know if it is the next time. I think. We did get.
It's around, even my grandpa took a sheep on.
Yes, I get it.
So, yeah.
We had a family going back in Arkansas, 400 acres, great day homestead.
Yeah, I get it.
Thank you.
It is. Thanks, man.
Good luck, sorry.
Thanks a lot. Where's the man of the hour, Trav? See?
There he is.
Oh, there you are.
TJ?
Well, closer.
Jerry, hey, good, how you doing? You're good. Great seeing you again. Yes, I will.
No. Next on the agenda, we're honoring a quitter.
Again.
We've got Aaron Rose, who's dedicated 37 years of his life to a career with this county, with law enforcement, and then he moved over to where things were really tough in Pub Works. And we just would like to thank you for your service to the county and your help down there at Pub Works. And we are very looking forward to having you swing by every once in a while and tell us what you're doing. So do you have anything to say, Aaron?
If you're giving me the floor, I'll take a couple of minutes. You may regret it, but no, I express my sincere appreciation to Park County. It's for the last 37 years. And it actually began a little bit before because I was working for the company that put the addition on what was the new jail at that time.
The new jail?
Yeah. And when they boosted the jail staff all the way up to 8, I was fortunate enough to get hired by Bill Brewer and start this career. So at that time, I had 2 young kids and had been in and out of construction jobs in the oil field. The early 80s wasn't too good of a time economically. and I had a full-time job with benefits. And the farthest thing from my mind at that time was that other benefit called retirement. And then all of a sudden it's here. So, but Park County's been very good to me. I have to extend my appreciation to the board, present and past. I know you guys haven't had an easy job. My career had its moments, but overall it was good. Numerous good people. My last supervisor, you guys got the guys there that I hope you, I'm sure you know, I'm not telling you.
No need to brown.
I paid him over. Yeah.
Checks in the mail here.
Dedicated people put in their time, and honestly, and 5 o'clock they leave. He's there after that, weekends. So, yeah. I said Park County's been good to me. It has. It's been good to my family. They arrived here in Cody in 1904. And down in the entryway of this courthouse, there's a plaque. Down in the corner, there's a name engraved on there. It says J.Y. Smith, superintendent of the construction of the original courthouse. J.Y. Smith was my great-grandfather. So I have a parting gift for the commissioners and the building and the citizens. This, I had to explain it so you don't think, what is he doing? But this is an old family portrait of the J.Y. Smith family.
Which was J.Y., the patriarch sitting there?
Yeah.
Cool.
The lady on the far right, Sam, was my grandma Rose. So, I thought that this would be an appropriate time to give a little bit back and acknowledge my great-grandfather.
Appreciate it.
My children's great-great-grandfather and my grandchildren's third great-grandfather. So, whatever you guys
Send over there, we'll find a place
to put it. And my family here was not the only ones that, there's a couple other families in Cody that are descended off that. The Stambaugh are from that, those girls.
I don't know if I'd admit it.
That's the one I'd admit. My father and Rex Vanderhoff were cousins. So that's where, that's. I forgot. Look, we sure pick a lot of things, but you can't figure it out. So, guys, that's all I have. My sincere appreciation.
We got Brian. Brian, would you like to say a little bit?
I would just, thank the chairman, just wanted to say, I've known Aaron about 7 or 8 years.
Yeah,
something like the plus or minus, but first time I met Aaron and, when I was told we need to get this guy in for our operations coordinator position, he was retired. I think I met you, at your retirement from the sheriff's office, but, you talk to him for 5 minutes and you see he's the perfect guy for that job. I mean, our office deals with a lot of sometimes happy customers, sometimes not. And, but he's always even in his personality.
Even one of my old has-beens.
Yeah, but he always deals with it, with professionalism and if the rest of us, we could learn a lot of lessons from Eric. I mean, he's class act, always willing to help anybody, and, shirt off his back. And I appreciate everything he did with us.
Great.
Thank you.
Don't go there. You gotta
exchange picture.
Yeah, your book we got to turn around here so they get a picture here. And
Aaron
this
Turner.
is-
Then you
Now you gotta look this way. Yeah.
Susan needs one.
That's great, thanks.
Family needs them.
Yeah, oh yeah. the family.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
you need to go pick out a print, you know, that the commissioners can buy you for a gift. I said, Susan Everly, go, I don't do it. You know what I'm saying? I said, I've got one at home that I haven't got framed yet.
Oh.
It was a Christmas gift, Jeremy.
Yeah. Yep.
Christmas gift for my son and his wife. I don't think, Jim, were you guys involved, or that just Jeremy was? Well, anyway, the artist is not from Wyoming, New Mexico, I think, Mike Scoville. He loves the Meeteetse area. This is his rendition of one of the old places on the LU ranch where I grew up as a teenager. So that it's a little special. Yeah, little special significance to that, so.
All right.
Yeah.
Appreciate it again.
Thank you guys.
Enjoy it.
Thank you very much.
I'll do it. You haven't seen the last one, I'll still come in and grab it. Just don't have to worry about losing my job.
Join us in a little refreshments outside.
Thank you.
So what you do, you give them some chocolate?
There won't be any shaking hands on the way out. Meeting with Gordon King. Yeah, no kidding. Jim, I love this. So I don't move it.
Yeah.
One time.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna do the reception and check out where you want to go. Well, I don't know if we'll make it, I guess he's. Check out where you're gonna go if I get there. I get there. How long is this gonna take?
Yeah, get lost between here and there.
Oh my God. Hey. So you're gonna pretend like you're me?
How are you doing? Good, how are you?
As well as you.
I don't know, I'm getting way old.
We all
know. You don't beat me by a little bit.
You got this anywhere in your near future?
Yeah, picked out the date. Oh, new vision.
Okay, so we're down to 12 months. Here we go. Yeah.
It's a lot easier.
Plans then?
That's all else.
Spend a lot of it out in the hills or?
The kids like to
You get some singles installed. And you run it. Just
cheap labor.
Yeah, just to be on.
rotate through it.
Okay. Yeah, teaching them a thing or two.
I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, I know it's gonna be nice.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, I've been working with your dad.
You went to city when you started with the county?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
It was great. When you were both on the. And then I came to the county first. He came to the place, I mean, we just.
Well, maybe there'll be more wonderful times in the future.
Oh, I'm sure there will.
You guys go for lunch? That didn't sound very.
It wasn't very enthusiastic.
Perfect.
Highlight of lunch, I had a big roll of hot butter. Made my eyes water. That was it.
Good plan. I mean, I feel.
Oh, really?
We're bumping you up. Mr. Crampton's not gonna be here. Yep, come on up. Next on the agenda, since Bill Crampton's not gonna be here, it's Rebecca Burns with Powell Economic Partnership, Powell, and here to talk to us about the polecat cleanup. And I think there's a request involved in that.
There is a request. So I respectfully request the waiving of the tipping fee. So let me kind of just explain what we're doing and why we're doing it and why I'm asking for a waiving for the tipping fee. So the polecat bench is a feature which I'm sure you're all aware of, but ironically, a lot of people in Park County who live here have no idea where the polecat bench is. The 17 or 18 mile butte right in back of the city of Powell. Obviously, the Powell Municipal Airport is located on top of it. And it's a pretty famous geographical feature if you're a geologist or a paleontologist. In fact, people have been coming to the polecat bench since the 30s and 40s and digging for early mammals from the Paleocene era. And you'll find a lot of different fossils actually on the bench. And I pulled out one article in particular that was published in the Smithsonian magazine. And it was really interesting because the author of the article said that he fell in love with paleontology on an expedition in Wyoming at age 17. And that really kind of illustrates the impact that our public lands have on not only the residents and future workforce, but also visitors of all kinds to our great state. Right now, the polecat bench is kind of a dumping ground. So, and it has been for decades. If you went up there, you'd find anything from old, washing machines, to TVs, to sofas and things like that. Because largely it's really not regulated. So who owns the different lands up there? It's mostly a checkerboard of the Bureau of Reclamation, the Bureau of Land Management. There's some state lands up there, and then a little bit of the City of Powell municipal lands and some private lands. But because it's about 500 feet in elevation above the City of Powell, if you're not recreating there, there's no real reason to go there unless you're at the airport or work for the oil companies. So hence why people come and kind of dump their trash there instead of taking it to the Park County landfill. So we started this cleanup last year, and during the cleanup last year, we had 44 teams and 44 volunteers and 6 teams, and we collected a 30-yard dumpster, like full to the brim, and then an additional trailer. It was over 3,500 pounds of trash in less than 2 less than 2 hours. So the people who were involved in that were, volunteers and really users, so people who really like to mountain bike up there or hike or hunt. They thought it was a shame that people are dumping. And this is one of the times where we hope that we go in reverse. We hope we can collect less trash this year, but there have already been sightings and more dump sites up there again. Really why we're doing this is if we can incite pride in the residents who are doing the dumping and kind of educate them and say, hey, this is an enormous asset. These are public lands. We are lucky to have so much public lands in Park County. 80%, as you know, of the lands in Park County are federally managed. And that's a huge draw and really a driver for all of our major economic industries, energy, tourism, and agriculture. So we can incite pride. Our thought is that the dumping will cease. And we do plan to, in the future, working with our land managers and the newly formed Park County Outdoor Rec Collaborative that Commissioner Thiel is a part of to create some features up there. So that will also help with the dumping. And that's really why we are asking for a waiver of the dumping fees. And we'll have Kyo Sanitation has provided the dumpster again, the roll-off dumpster at no cost. The Bureau of Reclamation and the BLM have gladly given us permission to pick up trash from their lands.
Might big of them.
Yes. And so we're going through the process. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for Rebecca?
My only question is to you, is this a required action?
Yes, it does. Yes. In order for us to waive the fees, we have to take action.
I so move to waive the fees for Rebecca and their cleanup.
It was somebody who's been up there.
Is that a second? Is that a second? Commissioner Mack? Okay, now,
I'm seconding, I would, like Larry and CJ, we just call it bench, but back in the early 80s, it was also caregiver area that I didn't know anything about. She mentioned all the washers, dryers, couches, and every one of them filled with bullet holes, because it's also a popular shooting area out there too. So there's a lot of people do use the bench a lot, and they leave stuff up there. So it needs a big cleanup. And I think it's great that we get a group that will go up there and actually do it. Definitely a hard second on that one.
hard second, Commissioner Mangold. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thanks for coming in and sharing that with us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
everybody for doing what they do.
Next on the agenda, we have the Park County Sheriff's Department, Joanna Harris, and board members for the Park County Sheriff's Department charitable organization.
Afternoon.
Afternoon.
I'm obviously not Joanna Harris, but she is president, so.
And who might you be, sir?
I am Darren Whalen. I am the vice president on the board. Next to me is Rachel Biles. She is the president.
Floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. I believe I was chosen to speak on behalf of the foundation board because I have a 20-year background in law enforcement, being a retired sergeant from the Washington State Patrol. I have a vast background of training and experience. I live here in Park County and have for the past 13 years with my family. The American Rescue Plan Act, COVID-19 dollars, qualifies for funding under these categories: medical expenses, behavioral health, public safety, and human services. We believe all of these apply to the Park County Sheriff's Office. COVID-19 has been a disruption to everyone. There is no disputing that. The influx of people moving to Park County and the impacts it brings to the Park County Sheriff's Office. The number of calls for service go up. The Park County Sheriff's Office is your front line of defense for Park County. Nationally, reported suicide rates are up 18%. People are suffering from anxiety from the pandemic, up 30%. Increases in alcohol abuse, opiate abuse, depression, domestic violence. All those have a direct impact on the Park County Sheriff's Office. The foundation asked our liaison, Sergeant Joanna Harris, who supervises detention, what are the needs of the agency and how can we help? The response from the men and women of the sheriff's office was, we need training and we need equipment. A list was provided from patrol, dispatch, and detention. I want to address training first. Needless to say, there are lots of opportunities for training. What training is being given now with the money that's in the budget? I asked Sheriff Stewart directly. His answer was very little specialty training. Most of the training spent in his budget was on firearms, first aid, and training items that had either an expiration or a recertification attached to them. There's no emergency vehicle operation training. Some have not been trained since they attended the academy in Douglas. Some deputies have no emergency vehicle operation training on the trucks that they currently drive. Deputies get basic training in Douglas. It is just that. It is basic training. No professional growth, very little supervisors training, no refresher training, no specialty training, no de-escalation training, no mental health training, no stress management. The biggest liability to Park County is fail to train. When something goes wrong, it will come down to who trained the officer and when. Attorneys will show up and ask the sheriff for his training records, and he will have to provide them. It could be as simple as a deputy running into a vehicle while responding with its lights and siren on to an emergency. That is your EBOT or EVO run. And as a result of that collision, somebody is significantly injured or killed. It will come down to who trained the officer and when. I want to talk a little bit about the training budget. There's $23,000 for the Park County Sheriff's Office, with $4,000 of that being for travel for training. That is for 63 employees. Over 50 men and women wear the uniform and are in harm's way on a daily basis. They need ongoing training. There is no travel training budget for detention. There is no travel training budget for dispatch. That comes out of patrol. Other county entities like the clerk's office, elections, judges, events coordinator, county attorney, all have a travel training budget that is equal to or higher than the Park County Sheriff's Office budget for travel training. A travel training budget of $4,000 for 63 employees is not adequate. We have identified a training budget need of $300,000 to cover the next 3 years of training for the Park County Sheriff's staff. It is time for the Park County Sheriff's Office to catch up on vital training. I want to talk a little bit about the equipment. Patrol and dispatch budget totals are around $50,000. Now, I know there's more money there, but I'm not talking about vehicle, gas, and tires. I'm talking about to purchase new equipment or to replace items. The ammo budget last year, fiscal year, was overspent $4,083. Park County Sheriff's Office had to be creative with their training, only using rounds to qualify. No additional rounds were able to be fired. Normal equipment replacement fiscal year was overspent $6,827. Tactical equipment was overspent by $798. This impacts other areas of the budget where cuts have to be made so the budget will balance. Detention's equipment budget was $13,800. So between the two budgets, between patrol and detention, there's $63,800. We have identified the need for an additional locking equipment consisting of $202,170 that provides needed equipment through December of 2024. That is what the deputies are telling us they need to do their job. Now, we asked for a list from patrol and we asked for a list from detention, dispatch. We provided those documents to you. I hope you received them. That is not the final document that we submitted to you. We went through those documents and determined what items we felt were related to officer safety and public safety. We narrowed that list down and developed some costs. I provided that list to the sheriff and I sat with him and I said, sir, are any of those items on that list unnecessary for your department? His answer was no. He actually had an item on the list that he asked us to remove because they had already purchased it. He then also gave us a couple other items that he felt were pertinent to the list and we added those. So what does the sheriff have to say when his people come and ask for new equipment? He has to say no, because there's no money in the budget. This affects patrol, dispatch, and detention. So I'm sure you're going to ask me, what are the benefits of the funding if we're granted these dollars to the citizens of Park County? Now, I actually had a $500,000 reasons, one for each dollar spent if you give us the money. But they asked me to keep it to 10 minutes, so I cut my list down. Good equipment, good training, you will have better retention. So it will reduce turnover. Turnover of one deputy costs Park County around $50,000. That's between the recruitment and the academy training. Turnover is occurring in patrol and detention, with detention having several vacancies right now. If you lose 3 deputies, that's $150,000 a year. Over the next 3 years, that's $450,000 of lost revenue to Park County. Fully staffed positions, especially in detention, means no overtime to cover shifts and reduce costs. None of the money that is tied to this money that we're asking for is tied to any pre-existing budget that will expire at the end of the fiscal year. None of the equipment or training will increase ongoing expenses after the money is used up. More training means less chances of litigation to the county, no failed to train situations. Now, there is no personal growth or self-worth felt by the employees. We need to change that culture. This money will be managed by the foundation board for the next 3 years and can be reported to you commissioners as it is spent. This gives a perspective of professionalism by the agency and well-trained employees. It is a huge morale boost to all 63 employees. The Park County Sheriff's Office meets industry standards for training for law enforcement. Proper equipment and training are vital to their success. Both provide confidence to do their job. Recent Reform Act from the IACP and the DOJ were recently discussed with Governor Gordon. If implemented or if changes are coming, this funding would already be in place to train the officers. We have 100% support of this proposal from Sheriff Stewart. One wrongful death lawsuit could cost the county $500,000 or more. We live in a time where the whole world is watching how our deputies respond to situations. They need the best training and equipment Park County can give them. In conclusion, is the opinion of the foundation, there is no better spending of the American Rescue Act funded COVID-19 dollars than to provide good quality equipment and training to the men and women of the Park County Sheriff's Office. We owe them that. If you commissioners were ever asked or audited on how the money was spent, you could be proud of the funding given to the foundation to support vital training and equipment for your frontline defense in Park County. These men and women at the park, are Park County's first responders, and they are asking for your help with training and equipment. There is no better time than now to help them. Thank you for allowing me to speak on their behalf. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioner Taylor.
How long has your foundation been together?
We are newly formed, but we are newly formed out of realizing the need to help the sheriff's office.
It's just in a year or so.
Yes, yeah. In fact, the list that we received from the deputies on the road and the deputies in detention, we got in June of this year. But I can tell you that we are committed to the Park County Sheriff's Office men and women to help them get what they need.
Oh, it sounds very wonderful, and I couldn't agree with more with everything you've said. I mean, the wish list, if there's a good way to spend God's money, which I don't like spending more than we have to, but this is the perfect place. It's just, excuse me if I blunt, but I don't know you from Adam, but you've lived here, you know, you're vested in the community for 13 years. I assume most of your members are as well. How many are in your foundation?
We have 7 members.
7.
Yes.
Yes.
You know,
I know the guy in the back.
We're trying to
be,
we wanted to be fiscally responsible and you know, only ask for the money that we felt was necessary for the next 3 years to catch up the training and equipment that's lacking within the Park County Sheriff's Office.
The question I have on this money, is there a possibility to use this money to leverage more? Are you guys looking at any grants, any matching dollars out there? Because that's what I would I would like to see is if we decide to move with this, is for you to leverage this for more money.
Absolutely. So our intent was to never come before the county commissioners and ask you for money, but I recognize that this federal money was out there. It specifically meets the definition of what we're trying to accomplish for the Park County Sheriff's Office. That's why we came and asked you for the money.
What I'm saying is,
Our intent, yes, is to publicly fundraise and to also capture any other dollars that are out there. If we can use this, yes, sir. By all means, we will do that.
Only question is basically with the funds. I'm assuming if your organization is that new, there isn't a 501c3 or anything.
Yes, ma'am, yes, we are filed.
I just wanted to be sure we were okay on track.
And that's in the letter that you received.
Yeah, just a couple quick questions. That was, Lee kind of alluded to one of my questions, but you know, if we were to give you that $500,000 this year, and that's certainly a great start for you, and I'm all for the program. I think it's wonderful. Our sheriff's department's been lacking for a number of years. My only question is, what's your strategy moving forward once this initial money is spent?
Sir, we intend to fundraise further and to be able to meet the needs of the sheriff's office through the men and women, through our liaison. We'll identify those needs, we'll meet as a board, and we will fund and get them the items that we feel are pertinent to the job. I sat with the sheriff on Monday and just wanted to make sure that we had his support. And I mean, this lack of funding that he has in his training budget and his equipment is, I mean, I feel bad for him, but it does trickle down and affect the men and women who work for it.
Well, sure does. You know, one of the things that we tried to do since we really started having budgetary problems here a number of years ago, and that was a decision the board made collectively, is the two departments we were going to do our best not to cut with the sheriff and the county attorney department. And I mean, we do the best we can, but realize we are lacking. I got one more quick question, and I hope I know the answer. In the future, do you anticipate any paid employees, or is this all going to be volunteer?
We are all volunteers, sir. Okay. Yep. I have a copy of my resume. As I alluded to you, I have a 20-year career in law enforcement. It has all my training listed that I incurred in my law enforcement career. And these officers here don't have that. And it is a liability to the county. It is a liability for the sheriff's office. I mean, you can go to any one of my pages. I just happen to flag one. And this occurred really in 05, but stolen vehicle training, officer safety training, firearms training, PBT refresher, riot control, hazmat, on-scene incident command school, BAC refresher. These are all things that occurred within that year. These are all things that this sheriff's office doesn't have the money to do. And if we can equip the men and women with more training, with better tools, they're going to do great things for this county. And I'm more than happy to give you my resume right here out of my book.
That's fine. I don't need it.
Okay.
I see Patterson sitting in the classroom.
If you don't mind, Darren, if I can just jump in for a minute.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Dave Patterson, I retired from the sheriff's office about 7 years ago, and I now teach up at the college. Just to speak to it a little bit, I'm on the board also at this time as advisory, based on my training from the past and all that. But one thing I do want to point out is I met with Governor Gordon about 3 weeks ago. He came to college, and we had about a 3 hour just to talk about criminal justice issues. I invited Scott and Chief Baker to come along, and we sat and had a good conversation about what's the direction in Wyoming, specifically on reform that's going on nationally. And Department of Justice and the International Association of Chiefs of Police and Sheriffs are all on board understanding that reform's coming, whether it's Wyoming or not. There's going to be some mandated reforms that are going to be coming out. And what better time to recognize, hey, these are coming. We're going to have to, the sheriff's office, the PDs, they're going to have to do this training. It's not going to go away. These mandates will be coming, specifically related to things like de-escalation training and ethics training, and improving the ethics within the groups that are out there. And those are just some of the areas that, and the governor was also, were you there, Scott? Sorry about that. But the governor was also very on board with understanding the whole movement that's going on and that it is coming to our state. It's something that we need to be aware of that we're gonna have to do, they're gonna have to do. I say we, because I'm always self-identify as a cop, so anyway, thank you.
Mr. Mendel, Dana, will this training also possibly take place over at Northwest College too? Do you integrate
Well,
that?
and Scott, that was one of the reasons I pointed out to the board that for me to officially be on the board of the foundation rather than just an advisory capacity might be a conflict of interest. Therefore, I'm going to be kind of as an advisory role because I could be involved in some of the trainings that are pretty much everything on the list training wise. I have the capability to do. And I'm also certified.
You've got such a great facility over there that it's a shame not to use something like that.
I've also got the certifications and the credentials to teach all this stuff.
I like the part of it, where it also deals with Title 25, since you know, keep dancing around that, or this might be a whole step into at least doing something. Title 25. Now, you had mentioned that you'd be reporting on the funds that are being spent. Would that be like real time or summary of the end of the year, or how does that?
It would really be, we would take that discretion from you on how often you want us to report back to you on how the funds are being spent. We will be fiscally responsible for every dollar.
I see someone back there that's very good at.
Exactly.
Absolutely. If you look at this team, like, I mean, there's not really many problems we can't solve. So,
Yeah, tell you what, sit down here. I wish you were here about an hour and 45 minutes ago.
But if we also, sir, if it looks like we're not able to take this money and spend it all, we will let you know that so that we can get that out to other folks that have other requests. But I fully believe that our costs are very low in their estimate, and we will use that money and it'll be put to good use.
So one of the concerns expressed by the board, and all of us want to see this move forward, all of us want to see it successful, is that if we do allocate these funds to use, if there's some sort of caveat there that if for whatever reason the foundation folds, that money comes back to the county.
Absolutely. And you know, with Lieutenant Patterson telling you that he is possibly gonna leave the board, we've identified that we may have to use him. The sheriff's office would have to use him for training. We talked about that even before this meeting. That is really the only interruption I see in this board. All of us are strongly invested in it. You know, it benefits everybody in Park County. And I mean, I'm volunteering my time, and I have no intentions of abandoning this board or the officers in the sheriff's office.
Well, we appreciate that, but we're charged with.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. No,
That's one thing I think, like I say, would be a caveat on that.
not a problem, sir.
There's a time frame that it has to be spent.
Yeah, you're understanding.
December 24, correct?
December of 2024.
So it's actually has to be spent by 26.
Okay, okay.
Well, we want more money then. I have a new proposal.
Great, thanks for the presentation. What, you guys want to make a decision on this now, or you want to?
You know, Mr. Chairman, I'm all in favor of the program. We're getting more and more of these requests.
Yep.
And originally, when we first found out we were getting this money, we're like, well, where are we gonna spend it? Now, I'm not sure we're gonna have enough to go around. So
I think it would have, just me speaking, as I think I want to thank this request, and we're, as Commissioner Tilden said, we're getting a bunch of them. We'd like to have a bunch of them sitting in front of us and evaluate. And, you know, we might come back and say, we can't give you everything you're asking for, but we can give you this much. So
yes, sir.
That's the direction I think I would like to go right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, but we sure appreciate it. And yeah, it shouldn't be that long before we have a decision.
Thank you.
Rachel, you're being almost quiet today.
Wow, I don't need to talk.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Is Ben out there? Susan? Is Ben out there?
There he is.
Ben. Pardon? Yes, sir, they are. Magician. Next on the agenda, we have our county public works project manager, Ben McDonald, camera. Here to, two items, approve and sign resolution, Park County to apply for fiscal year 22 CMAQ program completed. And approve and sign resolution to initiate proceedings for, the alteration of County Road 40 Blue River Road. Take it away.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, this is getting kind of be routine, but applications are due the 16th of this month for the YDOT program, the CMAQ funding. We put together a package and now we're here asking for your approval. Basically, we've designated about 18 and a half, 19 miles this year to submit an application for, which the total of that would be $111,000. And Park County's match would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $22,200.
Just for the application of the public, please explain what CMAQ is.
Congestion mitigation and air quality program to mitigate dust on high-use roads.
And the application of the magnesium chloride.
And our use is actually the program will allow you to use funding for reconstructing roads, aka purchase of gravel. You can go out to a bunch of stuff, but I think the lion's share of people using it in all the other counties is we basically prep the roads and we purchase the mag from one of two suppliers in the state, and then they apply it for us. So we go about as wide as we can.
I probably asked this before, I can't remember what your answer was, but is our 15% matching, is that out of pocket or can we do it in kind?
It's 20% and then
20%.
I know you're wrong this morning, it's 20%.
It's 80-20.
Okay, so and our 20 then has to be.
Yep, and part of the CMAQ program is we have to actually have a line item budgeted for this as part of the approval for federal funds.
And I'll also say, Mr. Chairman, when you go down to Cheyenne and you compete with all the other counties to get this money, it's a bit of a free for all. It's very, very competitive. So a lot of counties want this money, but they'll prioritize and rank based on, so somebody that wanted to say for gravel down or something like that, they think the best use of this money is the purchase of actually the mag chloride. And even if you, some of the people that are applying and are putting it down themselves, they get ranked less than the product of purchasing the mag chloride is the highest ranked thing, and they'll choose those projects first. And then that money can get depleted and gone.
So we could apply for it. But
You could, your chances of getting
but
money
the
go
chance
down.
of getting it, I see.
Yeah.
Sure.
Very
We'll get more road done by using the back.
Exactly.
Or paying for 20%.
Exactly, because we're well equipped to do the prep and the gravel side of it.
Which we're doing anyway,
Exactly,
other than maybe the pre-watering.
exactly.
Okay,
Need a motion?
I do. Or
Mr.
not.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve resolution for application for the QMAC program.
All right, moved and seconded for discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved. One more thing, Mr. Chairman, real quick, just to follow up, I know that we've had some discussion going about whether or not the bang for the buck or whether it pays for itself. And Ben, we're talking to the road bridge forum, we started looking at some of our numbers and whatnot. And really like the Wood River Road is a good example. They just graded it since, or just recently since last spring, summer when they put that on, and it made it all through that time. So we skipped like one grading, and what if you can just miss one grading by itself, it covers our part of the cost. And then we got looking at some of the roads in Powell too, and it's, you know, pretty easily paying for itself. But the thing that's hard to put a number on is in between those grades, some of our roads that are more heavily traveled, Wood River being one of them, you grade just once in the spring and once in the fall. Those in between, when it gets pounded, we get a lot of calls, and the road just doesn't hold up. And with the mag chloride in between just makes a higher quality product for the public. The road stays smoother, they're less apt to wash for it. They still eventually will need maintenance, but it just makes for just on a cost basis, it's not a wash.
but also we're getting a better product.
So with that, Mr. Chairman, if we could, is there more available?
There
Why
is,
are we going for, I mean,
part of it's limitations on what we can do, because you gotta have good gravel, fresh gravel to start with, but have good material. And so there's a certain.
so this amount is what we can justify by doing man-hour wise, time-wise equipment.
Exactly. For example, like what we're applying for this time is up Sunlight, where we've done some work up there. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the line.
No, we're on.
But I guess the example is though, we're always a step behind in getting those roads prepped and ready.
Well, I'm just thinking if we could, if we could really show on paper, prove that we're getting a big bang for our buck, then we may want to expand on it. My biggest concern, I think I told you earlier, was the longevity of it is not creating a surface that was unmanageable in 5 years. Because of but I'm not that familiar. I've used nitrochloride myself. It's just, I know there are some products out there that actually adhere to the soil that makes it difficult. You also help separate natural cover when we use it.
Yeah, he does got some numbers we can show you, probably the staffing. And all I can really say is there's a reason there's a lot of competition for this cross state, especially heavy oil and gas.
Sure.
Busier plants. It's a good way.
All right, next up.
Okay, and we've been discussing this with you, as far as the,
Do you need a resolution number?
I do.
2021-56.
Give you a copy.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, last item is just a resolution to initiate proceedings to alter the location of a county road. Portion of Park County Road 4DT, also known as the Wood River Road, which is related to our Wood River Road, the bridge DDO replacement, where the bridge is actually in a slightly different location and the actual physical road is not anywhere near the county road right away that was established through the statutory process. So we have the documentation here to initiate that, and then we'll have to go and do our advertisements and stuff. And also with the resolution, we would like to recommend Mr. Brian J. Edwards for the duly appointed viewer.
You're sure welcome to select somebody else.
Just as a follow-up on that discussions, basically the landowner is, the only landowner affected is going to be Ranch. So in discussions with them, they have zero issues with, any sort of claims or damages or anything like that. And I asked him, if he was okay with a county person being appointed as the viewer, and he was good with that. So
I might also add, Mr. Chairman, just real quick, just for the public and for the record. So this relates to the section of 4DT between the first two bridges. So those of us familiar with one that we just replaced, the next truss bridge, that's the stretch of road that we're talking about. Other thing is just it's old school for you, but I guess for the better of the record, this is the first step in the process. So this just initiates the process, and assigning the viewer, we start, we go research everything, look at all the information, prepare a viewer's report, and then come back and present that to you. There'll be a public notice period after that, 3 weeks in the paper. So, no decisions are being made other than proceeding, initiating the proceedings.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve and sign the resolution to initiate the proceedings for the alteration of County Road 4DT, Wood River Road, and assign Brian J. Edwards.
second.
Moving second, further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
For volunteers.
Trying to get him to do it. He's the man. Next up, we've got Park County Assessor Pat Meyer on the approving the mill levies that we can't disapprove.
Again, just Brian, you just.
We had a single out vote yesterday. I believe this one.
Or do we just?
Take it away.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of Pat Meyer, Park County Assessor. It's that time of year to approve the bill levies. Thank you, that's that. can say is, nobody's going over the maximum bill. Have that there. Everybody takes their max, except for the cemetery districts. You'll see, from the worksheets I gave you, a lot of them, kept up under the 3 mils. So, this is a copy I'll give to you, Mr. Chairman. It's the copy that I send off to the board. I don't know if I ever showed you this or not, but I've only signed it anyways. So when you approve it, Michelle. Okay.
Do you want to discuss?
Well, we have a motion out there. Do we?
Yes.
You
will.
Okay.
I move to approve the mill levy set by our federal office.
They're really set by you.
Huh?
They're really set by you.
I move to approve the
Mill levy
mill levies as
presented.
written on our paper sent by to us.
Second.
Move and second to approve the mill levies. Further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the only
Yep.
discussion I have, and I think this thing coming every year, this is ridiculous, this rubber stamp, they have absolutely no authority. So anyway, I claim my point.
Yep. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, man.
Okay.
No, it's, we said, entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Move and second to
What?
go into
You have
executive
no
session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Who seconded it?
I did.
Somebody did.
Somebody did.
Pause this.
See, good work.